Let's catch up. Hello, everyone. It's attorney Andre McKinney Dorval, AMD here. Before we get into the video, let me first ask, how is everyone doing? A lot has happened since I last posted, and it's just been overwhelming and disturbing, the tragic events that have occurred in the United States. And so, with that being said, I hope that you all are doing well and that you are safe. Certainly, my heartfelt prayers and condolences to the loved ones of those who lost their family members or those who may have been injured. Now, in this video, I want to talk about two things. The first is Venezuela. By now, we all may have heard that the Trump administration has appealed to the Supreme Court with regards to the final ruling on TPS being terminated for Venezuela, which includes 2021 designation for Venezuela. Now, you might wonder, didn't the Supreme Court previously go, excuse me, didn't the Trump administration previously go to the Supreme Court? And yes, they did. Back in May of this year, the Trump administration filed an emergency application or filing with the Supreme Court seeking to have its policy decision to terminate TPS to go into effect, although the trial court issued a preliminary injunctive order. The difference with what the Trump administration is doing now is that a final ruling on this litigation is what they're appealing. And so, if the Supreme Court decides to take up the case, we will definitely have a substantive response whether or not TPS for Venezuela, in fact, will be terminated, or whether or not the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision will stand. Now, let's move on to House Resolution 3486. Guys, this one we definitely have to talk about. Now, this is a bill that was introduced in the House of Representatives back in May. On September 11th, the House passed this bill by a 226 in favor amount versus 197 representatives voting no. Now, this bill creates and or increases the criminal penalties for certain non-citizens who illegally enter the United States and then commit a felony or illegally re-enter the United States after having been deported or removed. Now, I've done a side-by-side very brief comparison. And then I want to talk about some other matters that are all interconnected and tied to House Bill 3486. Now, the proposed changes, and let me just be clear, there are currently penalties on the immigration books that exist right now. The bill that was passed in the House, which is now in the Senate, is proposing to enhance some of the penalties and create new penalties. So, under Section 1325 of Title 8 of the United States Code, that provision currently provides that improper entry by a non-citizen is an offense of a misdemeanor punishable up to 6 months in prison and or a fine or both. And a subsequent offense, if you do it again or commit the offense again, is a felony punishable up to 2 years in prison. Now, the proposed changes under HR 3486 is that unlawful entry would be punishable by 5 years. So it increases the maximum prison sentence for illegal entry from 2 years to 5 years. It also creates or adds a new subsection that creates a brand new crime for a non-citizen who unlawfully enters the U.S. and then later is convicted of a felony. This new crime would be punishable by a minimum of 5 years to a maximum of life imprisonment. Now, under the current law for Section 1326, reentry of a removed non-citizen, The criminal penalties for a non-citizen who has been denied admission, excluded, deported, or removed, and then thereafter comes back into the United States without permission, that individual currently is subject to a maximum prison sentence of 2 years. But under the proposed law, or bill rather, for HR 3486, it increases the maximum sentence to 10 years. So again, you've been removed and deported, and then you come back. The proposed resolution increases the maximum sentence to 10 years. Let's take a look at some of the additional proposed changes this bill makes. Now, currently, under current law, it also provides for, currently on the books, increased penalties for reentry after someone has been removed for an aggravated felony, which is up to 20 years, or for committing 3 or more misdemeanors up to 10 years. With the proposed changes under HR 3486, the criminal penalties for reentry of non-citizens, um, the proposal is in a tiered-like fashion. So what does that mean? So reentry would be under the proposed bill, 15 years for a non-citizen who was convicted of 3 or more misdemeanors involving drugs or crimes against a person. 10 years for a non-citizen removed for a terrorism-related ground, and 10 years for a non-citizen who's been removed 3 or more times. Now, HR 3486 also adds a new subsection that imposes mandatory minimums on those individuals who re-enter the United States after being removed due to a prior conviction. Now, the penalty would be 10 years to life for those previously convicted of any felony, regardless of whether it's state or federal or tribal or local type jurisdiction, and 10 years for those previously convicted of a crime punishable by more than 1 year of imprisonment. It also adds to the definition of removal to include an agreement in which a non-citizen stipulates to removal during a criminal trial under federal or state law. Guys, early in our channel, we talked about stipulated removal orders. Check out that video, because in this new definition of removal, or added to the definition of removal, it incorporates stipulated removal orders entered into during a criminal trial, whether it's under a federal criminal trial or a state trial. Now, I want to share some similarities regarding the aspect of the bill that enhances the penalties for someone who illegally re-enters the country after having been removed or deported. And I want to draw to your attention, the similarities are very similar to Florida's SB 4C, which we've talked about extensively on the channel. That law passed in Florida essentially says if you illegally enter the United States, excuse me, and then enter the state of Florida, that is a crime. And so it sets forth criminal penalties. Now, let's discuss a little bit of what are some of the similarities between Florida's SB4C and HR 3486. Well, both of these, laws, the proposed one on the federal side and Florida's, which is currently being litigated, it makes it a more serious crime for a non-citizen to enter or re-enter the country without authorization after a previous removal or deportation. And so both of these legal measures impose harsher prison sentences. And so the whole goal behind this is to deter. And by that, these laws are designed to deter non-citizens from re-entering the country after having been removed. and making it more, um, the criminal measures more enhanced. And so, in both instances, it creates or increases the criminal penalties for unauthorized entry. Now, here are some of the differences that you may want to take note of. Now, with House Resolution 3486, this bill is a federal bill. And so, if it is passed, meaning if the Senate passes it or a version that ultimately gets brought in front of the president, if that were to be the case and it becomes law, it would apply to the entire United States. So, whether you were in California, or Texas, it would be the law that's applicable to all 50 of the United States. Florida's SB 4C is a state law that applies in the state of Florida. And one of the things that's being litigated with that particular law is the fact that Florida, a state, not the federal government, does not have authority over immigration. So, if this proposed bill were to become law, that would be federal law and it would apply to all 50 states, including the state of Florida. Now, as to Florida's SB4C, that is still in litigation. And so you want to just note that these are proposed laws that we definitely need to um, watch because they will have impactful, if passed into law, it will impact a certain number of individuals. But there's more, guys, I want to share with you. Now, uh, we got to tie all this in together because the emphasis on both of these laws, whether it's SB4C or House Resolution Bill 3486, with regards to these two legal measures, these are criminal penalties for laws that have been deemed to be criminal. And so that is important. And I bring that to your attention because back in July, and even before that, we talked about some of the provisions to the One Big Beautiful Bill with regards to the allocations of billions of dollars that were being proposed. And so the One Big Beautiful Bill has gone into law effective July of this year. And the bill significantly increases ICE's budget. The total bill provides approximately 75 billion in extra funding to ICE, which is allocated for specific purposes over the next few years. And so ICE is definitely well funded. And so the two components of the breakdown of the allocation of the funding that I'll share with you is detention space. The One Big Beautiful Bill allocates $45 billion to ICE for adult and family residential detention. This funding is intended to expand the agency's detention capacity to over 100,000 beds. This is a huge increase when you're talking about going to over 100,000 to where it's probably has been no more than 40 or 41,000 or maybe the high 30 some odd thousand bed spaces. The second aspect of the funding for ICE includes for hiring more personnel, assets, and enforcement capability. And so the bill allocates approximately 30 billion to ICE to fund for hiring, training additional agents, attorneys, and all the enforcement support staff that's going to be needed. That includes transportation of non-citizens. That also includes funding for the expanding of 287G agreements with state and local law enforcement. Here in Florida, I believe Florida may have the most 287G agreements with the federal government as far as assisting in enforcement and removal operations. Now, guys, as I shared with you, part of the funding for ICE is going to increase bed capacity. And along with that, that will, in all likelihood, include constructing facilities. For example, Alligator Alcatraz to house more people. And so this is definitely a bill that we definitely want to track and keep you updated on. There's a lot going on in the enforcement space, guys, and it doesn't look like it is slowing down. I do want to thank you so much for watching the video. I wanted to get us caught up to speed. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and I will definitely see you in the next one. Bye-bye.